I'm about 200 or 300 yards below the Rivanna Dam, below, downstream from the Rivanna Reservoir. And I'm going to show you what the silt and sediment is that people normally have in mind when they're thinking about what washes into the Rivanna Reservoir. And you'll see the composition is much different in a free-flowing river and what settles in a reservoir, if you can see through that reflection there. And you can tell by the difficulty of digging in that stuff. That's what people normally have in mind. Sand, a little bit of clay, rock. That's a normal riverbed. And one of the studies that was done mentioned if they were to dredge the Rivanna Reservoir, they would get commercial quantities of sand and gravel. But in reality, what is in the Rivanna Reservoir, as you will see in just a few minutes, is much more than just sand and gravel and a little bit of dirt and clay. As a river flows into a reservoir, the water slows down, and any suspended particles in it will settle. And not only the river itself, but the entire watershed, as it washes off the surrounding hillsides or farmlands, whatever the reservoir basin is surrounded by. And you might be able to pick up right there. You can see the bottom of the river here. There are places where there's algae growth and all that, but you can see the bottom. You cannot see the bottom in the reservoir because there is up to 4 feet of biological muck in that entire reservoir. And I'll see if I can do a fast, down and dirty mathematical computation of exactly what that corresponds to in terms of lost capacity for water. So during the discussion of damming and dredging, just remember that what most people think of as silt or sediment, and it's usually spoken of in terms of silt and sediment washing into the reservoir, is quite different than what is actually in there. So there's another clip coming up shortly, and you will see exactly how much muck there is. And that's mostly what's going to come out of the reservoir when they dredge it. And that's sort of good news, bad news. Mostly good news, because that muck is commercial. You can dry it, package it, and sell it. And it's also easier to pump with dredging equipment. It's like a slurry. And if I understand, the City Council just recently appropriated $1.2 million for a dam engineering design operation. For that much money, you could buy a dredging, what most people would call machine, which is basically a pump on a boat. That would buy you the basic machine, and you could start almost immediately. You could get a provisional permit. I mean, you know, it's doable, absolutely doable, because you'd have to get permits for the dam anyway. So now we'll look at the reservoir itself. Several weeks ago I did a demonstration on dredging and showed how it's a straightforward application of mechanical equipment. So after I did that, I figured I should go up to the Rivanna Reservoir and see what's in the reservoir. Now, this is the Rivanna Reservoir, a couple miles above the dam, and the dam is down that way, around a couple bends. Behind me it goes up a couple miles, almost to the Meacham's, Mormons, rivers. But this gives you an indication of the amount of silt and sedimentation that has made its way into the reservoir. Now, if you can imagine, the way the terrain lies behind all those trees is sort of like this. And once all that sediment, biomass, which is pollen, leaves, anything else mixed with dirt, clay, and a little bit of sand, once it comes down the slope into the river, it will flatten out because it hits the water, and the water moves it a little ways, but it sort of takes the level of the water. Now, this might appear to be like a fine sand beach. This is entirely muck. And I have to admit, I was surprised when we did the dredging demonstration. It was in a little development lake. I thought that would have more muck in it because the water didn't move as quickly as in a river, but I was mistaken. The Rivanna is choked, the reservoir, with muck and soil, mostly muck, and you'll see. That's what's in here. Both sides of the river. From the dam all the way up. Now, what that means is, that's the water I just pulled out right here. Some of the facts you'll hear say that the Sugar Mountain Hollow Lake is a much better quality of water. Well, duh. Sugar Mountain Hollow does not have the muck in it that this does. And this reservoir, especially after it's been filled in and choked with hydrilla, as you can see, all it takes is a wind, a strong wind, to stir up the bottom, and that adds the turbidity to the water. There are fish in there, and ducks at places. They just really, when they paddle, they stir up the bottom. So the water doesn't come in that turbid. The muck that's in this entire reservoir is what adds to the turbidity. And it adds it from both sides, because you can see the sawgrass over there on the other side. And when a reservoir gets silted up, you'll see little islands appear. We're in it hadn't rained for a couple weeks, a decent rain. So we're looking for some rain the next couple of days.